Yes.
Hello, Maureen. Hello, Alicia. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited. I watched this episode and it really hit home. My parents are Dominican. I was born and raised in New York, and I get chills just, I mean, the subject is for me so personal. Um,
Yeah.
so thank you for doing something, that's so important. I'm really glad that the topic has come up. So, just to tell you, just short of a blur, but my daughter she's 18 now, but she went through sort of something similar. She was taking Spanish in school, and the way she was taught was, I think it's Castellano. It wasn't the Spanish that we speak at home or even just like the everyday Spanish, but she would come home with questions. Some of them, honestly, I couldn't answer. And I am a native Spanish speaker. So, Alicia, I'll go to you first because it was your character. So, like I said, I watched the episode and the character goes through these challenges that sort of that tie into her cultural identity. Now, the topic will absolutely resonate with a lot of Latinos. Have you ever dealt with something similar in your real life? Um, and no?
I was gonna say, no, that was a Lord have I. Um,
What?
I have I have too many stories to count. Are you kidding?
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, I have way too many stories to count. I'm so grateful for my complexion and my melanin, and I'm really grateful that I've always had a mother that's empowered me um, as a Black woman. But geez Louise, do I have stories? Are you kidding? As an Afro Latina, I have stories of walking into audition rooms, having other like younger women, and I wouldn't hold it against them. It's simply ignorance, but having other Latinas in audition room being like, pero esta negra, ¿por qué ella está aquí? Which in English
No.
means this Black girl, like, why is she here? And it's unfortunate. I understand where that's rooted um, from, like, in the Latina community. I don't think that there has been expansive enough conversations or nuanced enough conversations about colorism and internalized hatred, or the fact that we come in every different color and our Spanish sounds different. So being a little girl with braids growing up in the Bronx with some Timbs on, you know, you know,
I
people
love
were
it.
like even members of my own family, um, they negated my Latinidad, even though Spanish is my first language. Then there's that whole conversation of ay, que tú lo hablas Macao or whatever it may be. So all of that goes to say, I have dealt with an immense amount of adversity and obstacles as a result of being an Afro Latina. Until this day, having people look me in the eye and invalidate my experience as a Latina because I am Black. So the fact that I had this episode to tell a story of a Latina advocating for herself and saying, no, all of us Latinos, no matter what your Spanish sounds like or what the color of your skin is, we should be proud of our heritage and our culture. So to be able to say that as a character on this type of platform was such a blessing. And I was emotional on set. I have
I'm
never.
emotional listening to you because I'm much older than you, I'm sure, and I grew up with all these emotions that I couldn't communicate to my parents, to my friends, because I had friends, some were Black, some were Dominican, some were Puerto Rican, and Puerto Rican and Dominican is different. And
Yes.
then, and then I had my Caucasian friends, white friends. So
Yeah.
it was really just, it was very confusing and it affected me, but I didn't realize it until I was much older.
Yeah,
So
for
I am,
sure. Like we don't I think have those multifaceted conversations of explaining. We can all distinctly have our different cultures, el cubano, el dominicano, el bori, whatever it may be, el mexicano, but we are one community, and we should never have this hierarchy of one is better than the other.
oh,
And I think that's where our community has done us a disservice. I think that we can have that beautiful juxtaposition of understanding that we're one and there's unity, but also recognizing that we are different, but there's beauty in that, and that should be acknowledged.
I
So
love that.
we strived to do that in this episode. And then, thank you for sharing what you shared about your daughter. I personally resonate with that as well. I was in a Spanish classroom, being a native speaker, being told all the time that's not right. And how do I go back home, to my dad, who taught himself English and taught himself how to, you know, navigate this country as an adult, that his Spanish isn't correct. You know what I mean? So it's this culmination of all these emotions, and it's invalidating and it's dehumanizing as a Latina when you're in those experiences. So to have a character that spoke up, and then to see that teacher held accountable at the end of the episode, was huge for me. I'm really proud of it, and I hope that Latinos enjoy that episode, and specifically Afro Latinas feel empowered walking away from it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really a connection that I have been making because I am speaking my truth. So thank you. Now, Maureen, it's really interesting because my first question, the first thing I thought of was, how do you prepare and guide Alicia and the cast members on an episode that deals with such, to me, it's a sensitive topic. It's a difficult topic. I mean, there's so many aspects of it that, you know, it's complicated. So how do you manage that as a director?
Yeah, I mean, I think first, for me, it was about listening, right? It's about listening to Alicia's story, you know, her experiences, her personal, you know, firsthand experiences that she's lived. It's the same thing with the writers, you know, talking to Marcos and Victoria and like why they wrote this, why they put certain details into it. So one, I think it just starts with listening. And, you know, after you listen, for me, it was like, oh, I can relate to so many of these feelings. And to me, it's about, what's so great about this episode is, you know, I grew up in Santa Barbara, a lot of Spanish speakers were friends. I never knew that this was such a, you know, the thread of everybody that I talked to was like, yeah, this happens all the time. So the fact that this is the first time you're getting to see it on TV, one, is just powerful. Two, like, you know, I'm so happy that I was a little bit a part of this episode, you know, to bring it to life, but also sad that like I never knew that before. So I think like, to me, it was just kind of wrapping my head around, one, this is a story that needs to be told. Two, how can I relate? Not, you know, not as a Spanish speaker, but what's so great is like sometimes in those details, it becomes a universal story. I come from a mixed family as well, and have struggled with that same thing about like others telling me my identity, you know, being half Irish, yeah, half South Asian. It's like, you don't look South Asian. You're telling, you know, like, oh, are you sure you're part of that culture? So I like totally related to that. And to me, that's like what great storytelling is you can take the specificity of one person's experience and it can just be magnified across platforms. And the fact that like this story hasn't been told and it's such a universal thing within the Latino community is so important. So I was so grateful to, one, just be able to help Alycia tell the story and just get to work with her because, you know, she's such a force. And I just felt very lucky that this was the episode that I got to direct.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. You got ahead of me though. I was going to ask you about, so Alicia, back to you really quickly. Your character, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I got from the episode. Your character seemed defensive, hurt, and a little bit insecure as she faced this, you know, this dilemma. But you know, the discrimination was there. So
Yeah.
your feelings were valid. How have you questioned your own cultural identity, you know, in your life? And I know I have. So,
you know, how do I answer that in a condensed manner?
I know it's a loaded topic.
I still do. And I think I always will, to be candid. But growing up, one, I was, you know, a darker complexion woman compared to the Latinas that I was seeing on screen, compared to the Latinas that I still audition with. So I was like, I always felt the need that I needed to prove myself, that I can dance bachata better than anybody else in the room. And, you know, I can eat the most plátanos, or whatever ridiculous notion I may have had as a kid, you know what I mean? But I questioned my identity as a Latina all the time because I don't look like other Latinas, or at least the Latinas that I was told I was supposed to look like. I don't sound like the other Latinas in regards to my, you know, Dominican dialect, the el que lo que and all that stuff. And I always thought it was so beautiful, but I learned that's not how my friends around me sounded. So I questioned myself all the time. And I think that started with my complexion, but then on a more nuanced level, I you know, had to navigate me sounding different, my curl texture. There were so many components. And I thank God that I'm now at a place where I am rooted in my truth, and I'm okay with people, you know, attempting to invalidate me, because I don't need validation from other people. I understand my ancestral connection. I understand my heritage, and the fact that I've done my due diligence to understand my roots, and who Alicia is as a Dominican, as an Afro-Latina who stands proudly. But yeah, oh my gosh.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm actually writing an article, and it sort of ties into this subject. And for the first time, I'm writing about my experience, you know, as far as feeling I wasn't good enough. I have cousins who are light skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes. I look very different. And then what society is telling me is beautiful. It's really confusing. And I still sort of have, you know, those moments where, you know, I sort of wonder if, you know, how good is, you know, uh, my heritage, my background. And I don't know. It's something that that's really hard to come face to face with. But when you hear, you know, stories of people on the screen, you know, behind the camera, then you sort of you feel that connection, and you feel like you're not alone. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure
Yeah.
the audience will appreciate it, and women around the world, period, will appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank
I kind of say it all the time. Like, I think we all have a little decolonizing the brain that we need to do. I think Eurocentric standards of beauty is something so deeply rooted in every community. So it is a rebellious act to tell yourself that I'm beautiful how I show up today, and I'm thankful for the body that I was put in. You know what I mean? So I think that's a rebellious act. It's beautiful to stand in your truth, and I think it's important for people to know that it's your right. It's your right to stand proudly, and no one is able to strip that away from you, no matter how many outside voices there may be.
Absolutely. So thank you for sharing that. Maureen, now we're going back to your original comments. So I read that you are half Irish Catholic, half Indian, Pakistani, Burmese, and Muslim.
Yeah,
Amazing.
my parents, yeah.
Amazing.
A weird, crazy mix, yeah.
So how have you faced your own challenges with cultural identity? Because sometimes, you know, I know being raised Latina, I sort of have tunnel vision, but there are others that face the same issues that we have. So I'm actually glad that I get to ask you this question, because it's important that we see other cultures have the same issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a little bit going back to what Alicia said, is that it kind of is rooted in our history, right? In the colonialism. And that's kind of why my dad's side, my dad is Indian, Pakistani, Burmese, Muslim, but he grew up in Burma. Our family is Indian, Gujarati, but then because of colonialism, they lived in Burma, and then that country became socialist and they naturalized to Pakistan. So just even that alone is like, the nuance and detail of that is like confusing to people. So to me, I'm trying to like, bite size it down so people understand, but that's why stories like this are so important, because everything is nuanced. And one thing I'm so grateful of is that my parents were from different cultures and different religions. And they never changed, right? They didn't convert. They kind of were their own thing. And they taught me that we can all be so different, but we can also be, like we're struggling with the same kinds of things. And I think for me, and that's why I kind of gravitate towards stories about conflicted characters that are about identity, because growing up, I was always like, am I this? Am I that? Can I be both? I remember one time in school, I said to somebody, I'm half Catholic and half Muslim. And they're like, you can't be that. And I was like, I don't know, I'm half my mom and half my dad, So I think it's that same kind of thing when you grow up, somebody telling you can't be that, or you don't look Indian, or you don't, oh, you eat with your hands. Like, oh, I didn't realize like how Indian you were. Like, so it's just, to me, it does kind of, it created a kind of a crisis of identity that I think originally might be a negative, but what it's done to me is maybe make me more aware of others and like how others can struggle. And if I'm doing that, like Alicia's story, it's like, oh, now I can relate. We can relate to one another as human beings and our struggle for identity, and how outside forces can kind of dictate who you think you are, but really. So now I can go through the world kind of looking at people in a lens that's like, people are all the same and they're holding the same kind of struggles and truths. So I think it just gives you a more of understanding of other people, walking through the world.
I love that. When you say it, it sounds so simple, doesn't it? I mean, we're all human beings. for all the human race. But I don't know. Sometimes
But the more stories we have that are nuanced, I think the easier it is for people to understand. That's what this episode to me is just so important, because I think, again, while I don't come from the Latino community, I just related to it so much. So I think everybody will watch it, understand the details of it, have a better understanding for that, but then also can come away with it by being like, yeah, there's some part of me that can totally relate.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, Alicia, this episode is packed with, for me, it was packed with so many messages. There's cultural identity, there's discrimination, there's cultural pride, because your character, woo, you showed you're Dominican. And my daughter, it reminded me of my daughter. I was like, wow. And at the same time, there is empowerment because you used your voice. And I love that, because we saw sort of the dark side, but then you came out shining, your light. And I love that. Now, what do you hope is the takeaway from Latinos and non-Latinos who are watching?
I hope, first, Latinos, when watching the episode, feel pride. I hope that they're proud of the story that we told. And I hope that they feel like it's rooted in authenticity. I think that that is like the most important component of storytelling. So I hope that people leave happy and empowered as like, wow, we see ourselves in a different light. And also I hope that it employs a lot of Latinos to have those difficult conversations. I think that we shy away from the conversations of colorism and having a social hierarchy connected to that, and the misogyny and the homophobia and the transphobia. I love my community so much, but I know that we're capable of better. And I still deal with a rampant amount of discrimination and racism from fellow Latinos who I call brothers and sisters. So I hope that, people feel seen and love the fact that my little character goes, I'm Dominican, to the camera. You know what I mean? I love that authentic moment. Shout out to Maureen for allowing me to do that. She's the best. To be able to create this episode with her was such a gift. She's a very talented director and storyteller. But yeah, I also feel that we need to be having those difficult conversations. I know it makes us uncomfortable. Trust me, I've been the one to ruin some family dinners at the crib, but let's do that. And then for non-Latinos, in short, I hope it encourages them to look outside of themselves. I am always wanting to learn and do my due diligence about communities that I'm not a part of. And like Maureen was touching upon, yes, there needs to be conversations that are for the Black community and for the Latino community, but also larger conversations about just marginalized people. So queer people, and Asian people and Indigenous people. I hope that we have more expansive conversations about diversity, people with disabilities. So yeah, I hope non-Latinos learn something new. Like Maureen was saying, a lot of my non-Latino friends didn't know that we spoke different dialects of Spanish. So I hope they leave with that. So there's so much in that episode, and I hope that people can munch on a bunch of different bits of it. So
thank you. There is. I felt that. Now, Maureen, what impact do you hope to make from this episode on your audience? What were you thinking when you directed this?
Yeah. Again, I was just so honored that this was the episode that I got to direct, because I do think it's such an important story to tell. I think for me, what I hope that people kind of take away from this episode is, one, they just enjoy it. It's a really funny episode, as well as being kind of about something, which is when something can tickle my brain and my funny bone, I think that's when it's its best. I also think that people kind of, learn something that they've never learned or didn't know, that I think even though if you're not a part of the Latino community, you can still be an ally, show up and support. And so I feel like that's what I kind of took away with getting to direct this episode, is that it doesn't matter if you're a part of the community, you can still support and listen to those in the community, and you can be an ally. Anybody can do that, and everybody should. So that's what I hope people kind of take away.
Thank you so much. Alicia? It's Alicia.
Yes, Alicia.
What? Alicia, why did you correct me? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're so
Alicia.
fine. I think I'm just accustomed to it. I kind of respond to a lot of iterations of my name, but it's Alicia.
Girl, you should tell people, no, you pronounce it this way. Alicia. Thank you. I'm glad I got that at least for the last question. So I like to end all the interviews, because some of the interviews have really heavy topics, but they're topics that I feel that need to be put out there.
Yes.
So Alicia, with what positive message can you give us about this experience that you've had doing this episode? Because I'm sure there were all types of feelings, but what positivity did you walk away with from it?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question.
Thanks.
Um,
Maureen, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
Something that I think I always say, just, commit to your truth and commit to your distinct journey. But specifically as Alicia filming this episode, I think,
Good one.
yeah, you have me stumped. That doesn't happen very much because I'm a chatty Cathy.
Oh, I can tell.
Pero actually, I think I'm trying to like find the proper way to articulate it because I just felt so many emotions. First, just so much gratitude, man. Little did I think I would be a Black Latina in braids saying I'm Dominican on Saved by the Bell.
Wow.
Like, you know what I mean? Like that's just like crazy. Like, and like, I don't know. I would say the
You're
biggest
gonna
thing
make
is
me
like,
cry. Oh my gosh, that's
I
amazing.
don't, so I'll get emotional as well. I would say, don't change, like stay committed to your truth. Like for so long in so many auditions, I straightened my hair. I was told that I probably shouldn't say this. I was asked if I wanted to change my name when I started acting, like, and then to have an episode where I felt so validated on so many levels, I meant like, who would have thunk? It came over a decade later, but I would say just, stay on your path, even if it looks so different, even if it feels like you'll never have a chance to tell your nuanced, multidimensional, unique, intersectional story. Just commit to that. Like, yeah, I was walking on light that week because of just how grateful I was and how thankful I was for that crew and Maureen as a director and a cast, and just have two Latinas, the epicenter of the story. Like who would have thunk? But yeah.
Thank you so much. And I do remember watching the original Saved by the Bell. So like you, I never thought I would see a Dominicana on as part of the main storyline. So congratulations. I'm sure you deserve it. Your light shines.
Thank you.
Maureen?
Was the question, what did I take away from this?
What
I think it was the positive impact you felt from it, right? Was that it?
Positive message that you can bring us from this amazing experience?
So one, I'm just truly grateful that I got to direct on the show. It's been a little bit, I come from features and I directed on Jimmy Kimmel Live for the past 3 years. So this was my first episode of television, actually. So I was very honored that this was the episode through the Female Forward NBC Universal program. So one, and then truly is that getting to work with the cast and the crew, and Alicia in particular, just to be able to like, I was a fan already. Like I had watched season 1 Moxie. I was already a fan. So to me as a director, it's getting to work with actors that are exciting, that that just light my fire up. So I was such a fan. So just getting to work with Alicia and Hiskiri in particular, and getting to see them kind of jam and like do their thing on set was so exciting and positive for me. So I can't wait for more stories for them to tell, that hopefully, we get to work on more things in the future. But that's just what I took away from this. It was just a lot of great people.
Wow. Thank you both so much for sharing a piece of your journey, your truth. I really appreciate it. And you inspired me today. So thank you for that.
Thank you for this space and this convo.
Thank you.